Up next, we have a presentation from Kalina Power with the ticker code KPO, a company focused on waste heat to power and geothermal power. To tell us more, I will hand you over to Managing Director and CEO, Ross MacLachlan. Good morning.
Thank you, Jane. Hi there.
Hi, let me bring up your presentation.
It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to speak with your audience today, Jane. And I'm calling you from a very early darkness here as light escapes us here in Vancouver. We're into the rainy season and the dark season is upon us. Folks, today I'm going to take you through an abbreviated version of our presentation, but I recognize in the brief time that we have, I just want to emphasize a few highlights as we walk through for your listeners, Jane, because I want to have an emphasis on why we see this as a compelling ESG story. It's important that I think your listeners get an understanding as to what we represent from an ESG perspective. I'd also like to emphasize on why we represent a strong, compelling commercial value proposition as well, because after all, this is all about us making money and how are we going to go about doing so. And why we think that we're at a significant inflection point in the history of the technology and the company generally. And throughout this presentation, I'll be drawing to your attention the emphasis of the team that we have, which is capable. It's an exceptionally talented team that's capable of delivering on that theme. And so while we're on this slide, I would just draw your attention. I won't go through each of these people themselves individually, but I would like to draw your listeners' attention to the various individuals that are here. Some of these folks are just outstanding. I mean, look at Jeffrey Myers, a senior operating partner at Stone Peak. He and I were together at Pristine Power. He was the co-founder and former chairman of Pristine Power for many years. Peter Littlewood, the former number 2 at China Light and Power. And our recent industry advisors like Stephen White, former CEO of Verison, who acquired Pristine Power, as it turns out, and later sold it to Pembina for $9.7 billion. The entire team is an exceptionally talented group. And at one point or another in all of their careers, they have come across and been involved with the Kalina cycle, as has our management team, which we'll talk about later on. And this underpins everything that we're doing. A little bit about Kalina Power. The emphasis that I want to point out is that this is a technology, and we'll talk about what it does exactly in a minute, but this is a technology for producing zero emissions technology. It's a zero emissions technology producing zero emissions power. And we have one of the most substantial patent portfolios in the entire sector, the entire industry. Not only is this important for protecting what we do, but I think it's really important for bringing on the right types of deployment partners around the globe as we want to eventually seek to deploy this technology worldwide. There's several things which we're doing that we think are essential to that. And the business thesis that we have in front of us is that we are focusing on commercial opportunities that are in our control, that we're developing ourselves in a focused geographic market in Canada. The technology has already been deployed and already commercialized at 16 different plants around the world. This is not a commercialization story. It's important that your listeners understand. This is a story about how that we can best go about deploying this technology on an industrial scale for international markets. And we'll talk about that as we go through this. And basically our mission statement is to establish a profitable business in Alberta, and that will serve as a platform to deploy this technology in a commercially successful way around the globe. The reasons why I believe this is a compelling ESG investment. It's one thing if you have an application in a niche market. This is an application across diverse major global markets. Each one that is listed there, and I'm not going to go through each of them for you, they're listed there, you can read them. Each one of them by themselves, unto themselves, represents billion or multi-billion dollar market opportunities. And how to go about them and access and getting our market piece of the market share is essential. And we believe that to do that effectively and establish the technology in a way that we can deploy it on an industrial scale internationally requires us to establish standardization of our industrial designs, modularization of the major components of the technology so it can be deployed in multiple applications in timely and efficient, cost-effective ways. And to do that with established supply chains and vendors for each of the applications that we have, and ultimately have deployment partners in place to deploy the technology around the globe. From a commercial point of view, I think it's important that we understand that we have multiple near-term drivers that are all in place right now in Alberta. We've laid the foundation over the last several years with several commercial opportunities, ranging from our own projects that we're doing ourselves, which are our own combined cycle projects. We'll talk about those in a moment. But also establishing a commercial presence in Alberta has now positioned us to be able to bid on significant business in different applications, which we've identified as priorities for our company. You might wonder, some people might be saying, what's this waste heat thing all about? Just to give you a sense, and trust me, there are lots of reports that can describe in detail the size of the commercial markets for waste heat to power. And the US Department of Energy has written a lot of them. But rather than talk to you about what those reports are, this quote is pretty significant. The energy lost in the United States from just the waste heat in just the utility sector alone is greater than the total energy use of Japan. This has been long held to be the low-hanging fruit that is available to start making a difference in terms of reducing the carbon footprint of industrialized economies. There's a significant opportunity here, and we're poised to go after it. Briefly, what do? There are several competitors in this sector, all doing essentially the same thing. And that's to basically meet a challenge, which is to say, for industrialized processes, which are producing a significant amount of excess heat, which is simply wasted or lost, what can you do with that? If it's not hot enough to produce power in a conventional system like steam, boiling water to steam to generate electricity, it is often hot enough to boil something else. We call it a working fluid. Our competitors use pentane and butane. We happen to use an ammonia water mixture, and that gives us significant competitive advantages. Before you say, well, that's kind of like a crazy idea, I would tell you it's ubiquitous. ORC is being used around the globe today, everywhere. And the leading company in this space is a company called Ormat, with a market cap of almost $4 billion, with a focus primarily in geothermal, looking at some industrial applications where they have made some market penetration. The fact of the matter is our technology has advantages over ORC in various applications of up to 40%. And that means we can produce up to 40% more electricity for the same waste heat that is otherwise going to be converted and lost. And we can make 40% more power than our competitor can in certain applications. What that does is not only makes us more competitive in those applications, but opens up the markets for our technology to a lot more markets than ORC technology can do. Our business model is rather simple. Our commercial opportunities that we're developing in Alberta are largely built around build, own, and operate, where we develop projects just as we did at Pristine Power and just as many of our team members have done for most of their careers. We are developing projects. Right now, we have over 300 megawatts of projects in development right now. And of course, we have our near-term project that's up and coming. At the same time, we're also in a position to bid on business where we can make and earn a royalty for our technology. I won't go through all the folks on here, but here are the primary folks that are a part of our team developing these projects in Alberta. And as you can see, all of them have been around for a long time, but trust me, they're all young enough and all very encouraged and excited to be working on this technology, a technology they've all followed, as I mentioned, for years. And we're in the position right now of being very successful with the projects that we're working on in the province of Alberta here in Canada. Next slide, please. Now, this is our number one priority, of course. This number one priority, of course, has led to improving the profile of our company and opened up tremendous new opportunities. But this is our number one opportunity. We're in the final stages here. We're in the final bits, pulling together the final pieces to achieve full notice to proceed later this quarter in this calendar year. And we have a significant project underway here. It's about $200 million. We're trying to get the cost down, but right now we're out there funding and getting our funding partners together to get this project ready to go. And it will come on stream in the first half of 2024. It's well located. We have exceptional de-risking strategies in place. And everyone who's reviewed it has been rather impressed. But it is the first of several projects which will all be the same size, same scale, that we can deploy with multiple deployments very cost effectively going forward, because it's all based upon a modular design. Without going through each of them, here are the strategic partners that we currently have in place, and there are others that will be announced shortly, who have been successful in winning some of the business that we have for this opportunity, and all of them are pretty well interested. Most of these industrial partners that are there are all interested on how they can participate not only on the current project that we have, but the multiple projects that we have in our pipeline, and of course the bidding opportunities that we're looking at, where we're looking to bid the Kalina Cycle into opportunities throughout North America and then internationally subsequent to this. I mentioned earlier our intellectual property portfolio. I won't go through it with you, but I think it's worth having a slide here that shows you we have over 317 patents in the portfolio, and we continue to, of course, selectively file for more. I just would encourage, if any of your listeners have an interest, please go to our website and click on the link. And there's a very brief 7-minute video which takes you through a fully operating Kalina Cycle plant. It explains the technology in excellent detail and also gives you an insight as to just how advanced the technology really is. Our conclusion, I should let you know, with all the activity we're having in Canada, we are pursuing a listing on the Toronto Exchange. I just want to emphasize again, this is not about commercializing a technology. This is about establishing the framework under which we can commercially successfully be established with our projects in Alberta, such that we can then effectively deploy this technology at an industrial scale for international markets. And I think the most important thing from reading through, and I would encourage those that are interested to take a closer look in the bios of all the people that I've shown you there, because at the end of the day, as we all know, great ideas are only one thing, but having a great team that can execute is essential, and we really have that team in place. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to any questions you might have.
Ross, thank you for the great presentation. We've had a few questions come through, and I know you did cover them, but I will ask them anyway. So can you please provide an update in regards to the TSX listing?
Well, I really can't, other than to tell you that we made mention of it in a couple of our recent announcements, and we're really looking to dovetail that, Jane, I think, around the timing of some of the commercial activity that we're doing here in Western Canada. I think, and we'll have a bit of an update and a more formal announcement that gives some direction to that. But I think it'll be sometime, I'm just going to say easily within the next 6 months from now. But I'm hopefully it'll be a little bit sooner.
Wonderful. And can you also provide an update on the significant WHP opportunity at the gas pipeline compressor stations in Western Canada?
Yes, there's publicly available information on that, which a company, for example, well, one of the biggest pipeline companies out there has made a comment and made a significant point that the amount of power that they use on the gas at the compressor stations to move the volumes of gas through the gas pipelines is so significant that there's a tremendous amount of waste heat. But what is driving those compressor stations? Those compressor stations are being driven largely by gas turbines. And it's exactly the same application that we have, where we're working with a gas turbine in our combined cycle plants that we'll be able to use for that. So we're looking forward to being able to come out and bid on that business when the RFP comes out. There have been indications that the RFP will be coming out this fall, but we're not exactly sure when it will come out. But we are really looking forward to being able to bid on that project. And I think it's important that your listeners understand the total value of that opportunity across the entire pipeline with just one of the major players is over $1.5 billion. We want to get a share of that, and I can assure you that's why we have the partners that we have in place that will be part of our proposal that we jointly submit to go after that business.
Well, Ross, thank you for the great presentation. That's all we have time for today. There have been a few questions that have come through, and I would encourage webinar attendees to reach out via the contact details on the bottom of the ASX releases. But thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jane.